Welcome to Laurier's Teaching Excellence Conversation Series. I'm Mary Wilson, Vice Provost of Teaching and Learning at Wilfrid Laurier University. And throughout this series, I'll be joined by recipients of the Donald F. Morgenson Awards for Teaching Excellence to celebrate their exceptional teaching practices, learn about their teaching philosophies, and discuss the future of higher education teaching and learning. Today, I'm with Lillian DeBruin from Laurier's Chemistry and Biochemistry Department in the Faculty of Science. Lillian received the 2021 Sustained Excellence Award. Her teaching shows a remarkable amount of perseverance, reflection, and care to create exceptional learning experiences for her students. Her course materials are meticulously thought out, and outcomes are deftly and sequentially reinforced. And assessments are scaffolded with constant refinement and development. Lillian has fully committed to the craft of education and engages in professional development for continuous improvement, and is committed to sharing her knowledge and mentoring both for her students and her colleagues. Welcome, Lillian.
Thank you.
Lillian, could we start by talking a little bit about your core values or beliefs or philosophies of teaching and how you see those having evolved over the course of your career?
Yes, I think that over time, your teaching does develop. And at first, you're just so concentrated on delivering the content. And as you become more comfortable over the years, the focus really shifts more from you to your students. And how can you ensure that they work with this content and that they build in their knowledge into it. So over the years, I have basically increased the way that I do my assessments, moving to more formative assessments through the semester, and then a couple of summative assessments as well. I think this really works for the sciences, especially in biochemistry, where there's a lot of content. Often students are overwhelmed with the material. So if you can break it down into smaller pieces, and when you come across a difficult concept, to have a short quiz or some type of activity that reinforces that, so that when they come to a test or the final exam, they've already seen it a couple times, they've worked with it, and they're able to approach the problem that's given them.
So you've really evolved over time from being a knowledge provider to being more of a facilitator or guide. And it sounds as though you've really adapted a lot more active learning approaches in the classroom, as well as modifying your assessment techniques. Can you talk a little bit about your use of the active learning classrooms? Because you've certainly been one of the early explorers of those spaces for instruction. And can you talk about how they work for chemistry and biochemistry?
Yes, that's actually my favorite room. It's very comfortable. I think the students are comfortable being beside their peers. So I've developed, depending on the course, different activities to do in class. For one of the courses, it's more problem solving. So often having different groups work on different problems and then present their solution to the class. That works really well in the active learning classroom. And for one of our fourth year courses, where we look at the scientific literature, the projectors and the whiteboards work wonderfully. We can look at specific results figures from papers. The students can annotate it, think about what's going on. And often it really takes a big screen to see what's happening, right? And it's amazing that each group has a different approach, and they learn from each other. They see what's happening while they focus on their group. And then once we step back and they look around, it's like, oh, that's interesting. So they do gain a lot from their group within their group. And then when they step back to look at the rest of the class, the other groups. So it's really an important classroom. I think many different subjects and I guess different class sizes could benefit from it.
So when you think about how it alters your course expectations, your preparation for a class, and also the dynamics between the students in the classroom, can you comment a little bit about how it compares to more traditional lecture theaters or lab environments?
It is much different. I think that a lot of it is applied knowledge that students take away from the active learning component. And that helps them with their writing. I really find that when they can think as a group, come up with ideas, and then when they step back by themselves, they can basically take that and put it into their own thoughts and bring that information together, whether they're writing up a short synopsis or answering a specific question that deals with the paper of study or whatever. For the active learning classroom components with the assessments, we have different opportunities for the assessments, so it's not always a test. Again, they can it either can be group or individual, but one of the other components that I've used in the active learning class that Steve McNeil does as well in our department that he actually brought in is group testing. And I've adopted that, and I think it works very well. Students work together to come up with the solution. And sometimes a student knows what the right answer is, but they don't know how to explain it. And that gives them the opportunity to put into words what they're thinking and letting another student understand. I do it in a different way for the two-stage or group testing. They do a group test in our classroom time. And at that point, it's just a short multiple choice question, and it often identifies where their weaknesses is. And that's followed up by an individual test that's later in the day. So it gives them opportunity to identify what they're missing, reinforce, go back and look at that material so they can reinforce it so that they're ready for the test that they do individually.
So that form of two-stage testing really does allow students to appreciate, as you say, much better where their facility lies with course concepts and where they are only holding things very loosely and are able to follow routine practice, but perhaps not understand the rationale behind the procedure that they're applying in that case. And then conversations with their peers around the table really helps them to articulate and formulate a theory of the application that's richer. So that's transformational for our students. Can you talk a little bit about when you started to make the shift in your assessment processes? What really inspired that? What was your realization?
Cohorts change from year to year. And what I've been noticing is that if I just give an assignment that they take home and do, some of them will engage in that assignment. Others will basically leave it to the last minute, and they don't get much out of it. But I find that when they work with their peers, they really want to ensure that they contribute. Nobody wants to be the one that's just sitting there saying, I don't know. And that really facilitates everybody learning rather than only those ones that feel like they have time to do the assignment if it was a take-home assignment. If you give them class time, they know they have to do something in that class time and discuss it. And basically with any type of group testing, if they have to come to a consensus, right? And if somebody's going like, I don't know, they're going to have to convince that person until they say, okay, I get it, right? So it's very different. And I remember one student saying, I think it's D's the one. And the other students are going like, why? He goes, I have a gut feeling. And they're like, what do you mean? So they know that they have to they're not going to take somebody's word on what the answer is. They want to know why. And that's really an important part of it. I know that if they were doing a take-home assignment and they do work in groups, sometimes they just go along with whatever answer's coming along. Here, they basically, they have the opportunity to question that person and say, okay, you know, we're all going to get it wrong if you don't tell us why. So it works. I think it works really well.
You have brought in so many innovations in your teaching practice over the course of your career, Lillian, and clearly you've thought about your teaching practice as something that has to be deliberately cultivated, that you pursued curiosities around teaching practices and approaches around curriculum design and the development of quite a range of courses. If you were to reflect on your development as an educator over the course of your career and think about the really key opportunities that you've taken to develop as an educator, are there certain things that you would really suggest that an incoming or a new member of the professoriate do based on what you observed about how it's contributed to your own career and your sense of fulfillment with being an educator in chemistry and biochemistry?
Yes, I think there's two really important things as basically learning from your colleagues. At Laurier, we have so many faculty members that are excellent teachers. And if you have an opportunity to have discussions with them, it's really enlightening. And the other point that I started doing early when I started at Laurier was attending a lot of the teaching and learning. There used to be an annual teaching day, and those were always like, oh, I didn't know that, or that's really interesting. And it just put off light bulbs. And you think like, how can I bring this information into my classroom? And very many other special lecturers that came into Laurier from across the country and across the globe. I can remember one, Linda Nelson, she came in and she talked about specification grading. And when I first heard it, I thought like, I don't think it would ever work. It doesn't sound right. But after really looking more into it, that's actually a practice I have adopted as well.
That's fascinating. So just that kind of engagement and conversation with colleagues, it does need to be intentional. And I think as new members of the professoriate, we sometimes feel daunted by our senior colleagues. So it's really nice to hear you say that it's been important to you and to invite it among others. When you think about the future of education for your chemistry and biochemistry students, what's your greatest ambition for them?
I think that they are able to find information, critique it, analyze it, and then basically, once they evaluate it, put it into their own words. And that takes a lot of practice. And really one of the things that we have to realize as experts in our field that we're dealing with a lot of young novices, and it takes time, and to give them that opportunity to do it again and again, and each time come to the next level and then to the next level. I'm pretty proud of the fourth year students in my classes. Where they start and where they end up, it's transformational. They become better critical thinkers, their writing improves, they can approach problems. And that's something that I tell them. It doesn't matter if you stay in chemistry or biochemistry or science, or whatever field you go into, these are skills that can take you to wherever you want to go. Just to look at information, digest it, evaluate it, and then make sense out of it.
Well, Lillian, thank you so much for joining me in conversation today. And I want to thank the audience as well for joining us to celebrate teaching excellence and student success. I hope you'll join me again in the next conversation as I continue to celebrate our award recipients and highlight exceptional teaching at Laurier. Thank you so much for your time today and the conversation, Lillian.